I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Appointments and Ordinance Committee on Wednesday, August 12th at 5:42 p.m. This meeting is being recorded by the Appointments and Ordinance Committee. If any other person present are doing the same, please notify me at this time. Seeing none, I will take a roll call of members. Councillor Gwen is present. Councillor Forgy?
Here.
Councillor Ricketts?
Here.
Was that a here? Councillor Bottomley?
Here.
Councillor Mayo?
Here.
We have a full committee and a quorum. Let me go back to where all of you are. Okay, I apologize. In the new system of how to share my own meeting, I deleted something and could not recover it, so I couldn't open the meeting. So I apologize for those of you that were waiting. It was not my intention. Obviously, a couple of things. If anyone would like to speak with me, just use the chat box, especially with counselors. And we will proceed in just one moment. Could I have someone make a motion to accept the meetings of July 8th?
I make that motion.
I make a
Mayo.
motion to accept the minutes of July 8th.
Okay, so I have that accepted by Mayo and seconded by Ricketts. Any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention.
Was there an abstention?
Yes, there was from 4G.
Okay.
It wasn't there.
We're going to move right into motions. Councillor Forgy, would you like to read the motion for this evening?
I will.
It's on page 4.
I'm not on page 4. Is there somebody else that could help?
Sure. Does someone want to read the motion?
Well, wait a minute.
Try to read it. I have a dog barking here, but I'll try.
Thank you, John. That would be great.
Shoot. I think I've got it here. Page 4.
Yep.
Be it moved that the Greenfield City Council, pursuant to Chapter Section 2-10, affirms the following reappointment by the mayor to the Conservation Commission, Rachel Lindsay, for a 3-year term to expire June 30th, 2023.
I'll second. Yeah.
Okay, so that was that the Greenfield City Council, pursuant to Charter Section 2-10, affirms the following reappointment by the mayor to the Conservation Commission for Rachel Lindsay for a 3-year term to expire June 30th, 2023. That's been read and accepted. Is there any discussion on that motion?
No.
Seeing none, a vote to affirm that motion will send a unanimous recommendation to full council. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Was that a opposition, or was that
Unanimous.
in favor?
It was an
In
aye from
favor. I
Mayo.
think it's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. So any opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, that will send a positive unanimous recommendation from our committee. Moving on to our agenda tonight, our first order of business is a discussion to establish the rental dwelling units working discussion with the Board of Health. So I know that some of the people that are in, and I welcome all of you that are watching tonight. What we are doing is this motion, this idea, this ordinance was brought forward, and it's only in the discussion stage by this committee. We are still in a process of working towards if we feel that it merits bringing something like this forward. So I don't want anyone to think that it's ready to go to council, that it's in any form other than it was brought forward. And now this committee will take a look at it. We'll start by talking to the Board of Health, who will give us their ideas on what the process was and the need for such an ordinance. And then in the future, probably next meeting, we'll ask some of the other folks that have sent an interest in discussing this with us, an invitation if we move in that direction. Does that sound like where we are in this stage to everybody, that we're just in a working discussion to take a look at the pieces of this? Councilor Wheeler,
Well,
go ahead.
I do have a question.
Sure, go ahead. Who is this?
Councilor Ricketts.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Ricketts.
Okay, yes. Yeah, well, I am happy to hear from the Board of Health, because I hope it's going to clear up a lot of questions I have. And I do hear what you're saying about our next meeting, maybe inviting more people to speak. But I know the people that I want to hear from are actually watching tonight. So I hope once the Board of Health finishes up, we do hear from them, since they are on the line, and it'll help me not have to run around and call them all, separately. So then by next month, we have specific questions, if any. But I feel like I'm going to get most of my answers tonight. But by the people that I see that are in attendance, I personally, after I hear from the Board of Health, I would love to hear from the people that have logged on as well.
I'll take that under consideration, Councilor Ricketts. My only fear is that I didn't include that portion on the agenda. Today was supposed to be the Board of Health talking about the intention, and then us as a committee deciding the process we wanted to follow. So we'll start there. Any other comments?
Oh, we shouldn't ever, yeah, well, yeah, then I just want to take a moment to apologize to the people that are in there, because it was in the paper, and it was like, we try to get people to come to the subcommittee meetings so that, it doesn't take up tons of time and people waiting at full council. And
right. No, it will definitely be.
Come back next month, and I am sorry for this process if that's what happens to you. So, because I want to hear from you, because you have so much good information that I need.
Definitely. We had gotten a lot of requests to speak, and as a committee, we'll then ask those people to have the time to discuss it with us as we see it moving in that direction. But at this point, we don't even really know the intent. So nor do the people that are concerned with this, because it's really not in any format yet, except for the initial draft that was sent in as an idea by Councilor Wheeler. Any other councilors have any questions at this time? All right. At this time, I'd like to invite the Greenfield Board of Health to speak with us on the thought and reasoning, and we'll ask you some questions, and see where we go from there. Are you with us?
I am. I want to also clarify that I am not the Board of Health. I am the Health Department.
Yes.
I am the Director of the Health Department. We are the ones, myself and one other person, we are the ones that do the inspections and the enforcement. I just want to make that clarification.
Okay, so for the record, why don't you tell us who you are, and are you not able to come on camera?
There.
All right. So if just for the record, if you could tell us who you are, and then let's start a little bit of discussion on the idea behind this, and we'll move forward.
Okay, my name is Valerie Bird, and I'm the Director of Public Health. I am generally I'm involved in the housing inspections and enforcement of housing issues.
Okay.
As far as the pre-rental inspection, I've had significant experience with this in another municipality, and I find that is very helpful. It is helpful in curtailing housing issues before they happen. A pre-rental inspection is what I do. I would inspect once a property is vacated. It would need to have an inspection by the health department. We would then inspect it. Takes approximately a half an hour. If it all goes fine, we would give the owner a certificate of compliance or a certificate of fitness saying the apartment is fine to rent. If there are deficiencies, then we would note those deficiencies, and he would have the opportunity to fix those, call us back for an inspection. This process will protect the tenant. It protects the landlord, because the landlord will say this property was up to code when you rented it, and now that you're moving out, there's a number of deficiencies that you have caused. And it gives the opportunity for the owner to go after the occupant, say they've created some issues. It also protects the city, because we would not be in housing court as much, and we would not be chasing complaints, which is what we're doing now. We spent a great deal of our time chasing complaints.
In what aspect are you referring to that? Chasing complaints? What?
Okay, so as you probably saw in the Greenfield recorder, we now have a house that's in receivership. If this process was in place prior to that, this gentleman would not have been able to have the turnover that he did. When I first started this process with this gentleman, he had 5 tenants. Out of those 5 tenants, 3 of them have changed twice. If we had this in the works beforehand, we would have been able to stop this. We also we chase a lot of complaints regarding. I have a faulty light switch. It's been this way since I moved in. My wash machine hookup is not correct. A lot of those things we would be able to fix. Lead inspections. If an owner is going to rent to a child less than 6 years old, he would have to produce a lead certificate.
Okay. Understanding that, is there you said that you were familiar with this through another municipality.
Yes.
My question is, has it become a concern in this municipality? Are you dealing with a lot of this situation, or is this just an idea coming forward that worked somewhere else and you thought it could be implemented here?
No, I see that this would work in this municipality. It's also not just in one other, but it's in most of the surrounding towns have this rental inspection.
I'm going to open this up to all of my counselors. So if you have questions for the Board of Health from any of the committee, please put them in the chat that you'd like to speak so I can go in order. My first question is, with this being a pre-inspection before a renter, a landlord can rent, how is time with a small, amount of personnel able to do this? And especially in a time where COVID is happening, where we're not doing a lot of things in person, I can see this backlogging and causing all of, landlords to not be able to rent and turn properties over as soon. So where does that come from?
I do understand your question, and that's a good question. We actually have a grant-funded person that would help out at least for the first 6 months.
And the grant is only for 6 months?
Currently, yes.
So then after that,
That
go ahead.
doesn't mean it's not going to be extended, but hopefully we'll be able to correct a lot of issues and we'll be able to move forward.
But if an ordinance is changed, ordinances have a tendency to live forever. So
Yes.
after a 6-month grant period, would we then have to go out and hire someone to fill this position?
That's a good possibility. That was the thought in mind when I actually did my budget last year. I created that position first. I created a 20-hour part-time position to do this, but then it was brought to my attention that we can't do that first. We have to do the ordinance first. We have to show a trail of revenue. So with an inspection, we charge a small fee. That will in turn, after 6 months, should support or will support a part-time person. So it won't end up costing the city any money, but it will be a benefit.
Okay, Councilor Forgy.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions for you, if I may. Has the Board of Health specifically seen this language and agreed to it?
Yes.
Did they take a vote? Is it in the minutes that they took a vote?
No, they did not take a vote on this because this is more of an inspection process.
Okay, well, from my point of view, I would like to see the board endorse or not the codified language. That would be a good starting place, and it would give the weight of the board behind it. I also have a question for you that was part of the language that was presented by Council Wheeler when you referred to a copy of the standards of fitness for human habitation. And I wondered if we, as the committee, could get that particular reference from you in writing, like in an email or, something for us to look at so that we understand the standards which you're trying to achieve. I think that would also be a very good starting place for us.
Okay, I do have that. I can send that all out to you in an email.
If you could send that to the town clerk, that would, city clerk's office, that would be great. Councilor Forgy, I'm going to move on and come back if you have additional questions. Councilor Ricketts.
Yes, thank you. Councilor Forgy, those are two really good points. I was also going to ask Valerie, do you have any reports or anything that shows that how much of an issue this is? Because what I'm really looking for is to know if it's like one or two landlords and there keeps being so many issues and things happen in court quite a bit, because I feel like this ordinance isn't really a help to that type of problem. It needs to be, we need to do something totally stronger. That means maybe that person's not allowed to rent, period, anymore or something. I just feel like we are taken a movement that's going to impact all landlords. And I just want to make sure that this isn't really about one or two landlords and what their continuous behavior has to be. So I was just wondering, could you give us a report on, and we don't need names or addresses or anything, but could I see how many complaints that you do get either on a weekly or a monthly basis, so we kind of have an idea how big this problem actually is?
Yes, I do have, we were keeping a log of daily reports, and I do have that, and I can send that to you.
And it's always
It's not the same landlords, it's different landlords. There are 2 or 3 that are repeat offenders, but it's a variety of landlords.
and is it your follow-up? I'm sorry.
Sure, of course.
In doing this, are you finding that it's the same kind of offense each time? Like, is there anything that's just never really getting covered by landlords that you have to keep addressing? Like, is it, the lead paint issue? Is there anything specific? Or
No,
is everyone something different?
there are other issues. Trash is a big concern. Simple things, lights in hallways, the owner's name posted. It's a lot of things. That's why, well, I have a checklist that we created, and we go by this checklist. We actually do what's called an Mrvp inspection, which is the same type of inspection. That's a Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program inspection. We use that checklist and we give them a certificate of fitness when it's done, but it's always the same issues for different tenants, for different owners. It's outside lights, it's inside lights, it's one burner on the stove doesn't work, it's my apartment doesn't heat correctly. There's a lot of things.
Councilor Ricketts, let me know if you want to have any follow-up questions on that.
Yeah, I just had one more, and it just oh yes, one more, and then we could move on to whoever
No,
else
that's
needs to
okay.
speak.
Feel free to just come back.
Do all of our landlords in town have this list that you speak of, so that they're aware that at any time a tenant may call, this is what you're going to be looking at? So is it something that they have to come to you for, or do you send them out to all landlords? Do you have a database?
Councilor
They would
Ricketts,
have
you mean
to-
currently?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that question. Councilor Gwen?
Yes, go ahead.
I didn't hear what you said after the.
Okay,
I was
missed you too.
asking Councilor Ricketts if she meant currently. Is that what you were referring to, Councilor Ricketts? Currently sending out to landlords? Did I lose you?
Right. I just wondered, do they already, is this something that they already know?
They
Or,
do not.
or is that it? Oh, so you,
Unless they've asked for an inspection, they wouldn't know. The inspection process has been out there. It's been on a voluntary basis, and we've had nobody that's taken advantage of it. Even though it could potentially protect them, we've had nobody take advantage of it.
All right.
thank you so much.
And we'll come back around. I have a question, and Councilor Wheeler, feel free to join in this conversation, because it's a conversation that you and I had. My question is, I know we have, like in every business, there are the bad, the good, and everything between, but I am convinced that we have a lot of good landlords and a lot of positive landlords in Greenfield. Is there a way to draft this ordinance that would be acceptable to you, that this kicks in after X amount of problems with a specific landlord, so it doesn't become overwhelming and a negative to landlords that already are doing well. My question is very general. So if someone, creating through you that after 6 violations, then for a period of time, they have to have pre-inspections, would that be an acceptable piece to you? Go ahead.
I have a comment. So it doesn't just protect against landlords, it protects against problem tenants, which is a bigger problem than the landlords.
So
I have good landlords out there that have problem tenants that keep destroying their property, and they don't have any recourse except for going to court. But if they had that certificate, they would have some backing.
So are those good landlords using the inspection process that's already in place? Because you had said that no one's using it.
No.
So
No.
would that be helping them if they use that inspection that's already in place?
Yes.
So I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but if it's already in place and all they have to do is ask for it and it's going to help them, why aren't they asking for it?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them.
I just can't imagine putting another one in place, because it would kind of be, if it's already available to them, if you say it's for good landlords that are having bad tenants, wouldn't those good landlords already contact you and you would suggest that they use the plan that's already in place?
There's a lot of people that don't know we have it available.
Okay, but if someone was to call you and ask because they were having bad tenant situations, wouldn't then they be informed that this is available to them without it being a punitive situation?
The issue is they should have called before the tenant moved in, because it's a pre-rental inspection, so they would get their apartment inspected before that tenant moved in.
Okay, so people that have called into you that have had a bad tenant and you explain that process, so now they're calling you on their apartments before they rent them for going forward? They're using it? They haven't?
Nope.
Okay. All right, moving on. Counselor Bottomley.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So when there's a complaint and you have to do an inspection, is there a fee attached to that, to the landlord?
Not an initial fee.
Okay.
Somebody calls with a complaint. I schedule the inspection. I issue the order to correct. I go back and reinspect. If I have to go back and reinspect a second time after I've issued the order to correct, then there is a fee. It's a $65 fee, and that was set before I was hired. And if I have to go back a third time, it's $125.
Great, thank you.
Counselor Wheeler, I believe that's you under City Council.
Yes, it is. Thanks. Just addressing what you just said and what we talked about on the phone about whether the ordinance could be written in a narrower way to specifically target some of these issues of the biggest problem landlords. I'm absolutely open to that. I think that's a goal of these discussions. But the piece that you specifically referred to about whether we could say make it only apply to a landlord after they've been charged with a certain number of violations, here's the problem that would not address. Right now, as a precinct counselor, I have tenants who will contact me about issues, health and safety code violations. And I will connect them with the health department, and they will report the health code violation. At least one property owner in my precinct will then threaten them with eviction. Now, this is illegal, but it doesn't stop them. So I'm, as a precinct counselor, I'm looking for an effective way to deal with this issue of people repeatedly trying to report health code violations. These are families, they have young children, and landlords repeatedly denying the Board of Health access.
Okay. All right. Counselor Wheeler, feel free to come back in as these discussions. Counselor Forgy.
I know this is in the starting stages that we're really looking at the language and everything else, but to this point, has any of this language been reviewed by the city solicitor?
I made a request until there was a reason to have it go to the city solicitor. We don't have things that go to the city solicitor without a specific reason for sending it. So the answer would be not yet. And the final version that we get to, if we so choose to move it forward, we would then make sure that it was in compliance with Mass General Law, Mass Housing Law, and all of the affected elements.
Thank you.
Councillor Ricketts.
Yes, thank you. So I think I just want to totally understand this. And Valerie, were you, at any time when you were speaking, were you saying free inspections? Were you saying that?
When I do an order to correct, the first inspection that I go back to is free. The second one, if I have to go back a second time, then there's a fee attached. And if I have to go back a third time, then the fee is up. That was in the health department fee structure before I was hired. I think that's been around since 2015 or 16.
Okay, thanks. And follow up. Could you also, when you send us reports, send that fee structure? And
Certainly.
do you know, is there still a landlord's business association? Do you know of?
I don't know. That would be an MJ question. I know we
Okay.
did a couple of landlord workshops. We did one pre-COVID, and it was very well attended.
Okay, so yeah, so I feel like all right, I will get in touch with her, and I would just like to have some input. And so believe me, I'm not saying things that I'm not believing any of the tenants at all. I'm just trying to understand everything that may happen and all the fees that might come down. Just for some of the stuff that you did say is that there's tenants that are really destroying some properties, and then when the next person moves in, then what happens? I just want to see what the exact process is and make sure that I fully understand it, and so I can hear both sides of all of these issues. So I say if somebody moves into an apartment and they get in there and only 2 burners work out of the 4, and they talk to the landlord a couple times and the landlord does nothing, and then they call you, that's what starts the process of you going out for an inspection.
Yes.
Something like that.
Currently, yes.
All right. And so that checklist that you work off of, do you think that is it on like your website or something? Is it something that all tenants could see? So it's things that they can check when they go to look at an apartment?
No, but that's a good idea. It is currently not on the website, but I will see to get it on there.
Because I'd like to help both sides. I want to make sure
Right.
that paper is in the hands of every landlord, and then also in the hands of tenants, so then it won't be such a surprise. And then we just have to deal with what we do when there is a complaint and the landlord doesn't follow through to fix X, Y, and Z, and how much time are we giving them? Hopefully, what you're saying by this new ordinance that we're working on is you want to make sure everything on that checklist is done before a tenant moves in,
Yes.
period, right?
Yes, and they're all minimum standards of human habitation. It's the bare minimum. These things need to be done. They need to have hot water to a specific temperature. They need to have their stove that works. Their outlets work.
Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. Councilor Ricketts, I think you make some excellent points on making things available and making, make sure we address those things as we move forward. One thing that when you were speaking to us earlier, Valerie, about the inspection that's already available, I think working with the mayor's office I think we need to use what we already have before we try to create something else in addition. Meaning, you said earlier when I asked the question, you said that people that have a bad tenant situation, they contact you, and then I said, well, going forward, then they have you do these pre-inspections to the free ones to help them, and you said no one's took advantage of that. So my theory would be maybe we need to educate and let people know that this is available. If it's a tool for a problem, common sense for them to say on a second offense, I'm going to get this pre-inspection done to protect me going forward. So I can't imagine that if it's the landlords that are trying to protect themselves for tenants, why wouldn't they already be taking advantage? And you said you didn't know that answer. So my thought is, I guess we have to look at what's already available before we do redundancy just to cover something that's not being used. To make something mandatory that's supposed to be a help, I don't see the actual necessity, which is different from what Councilor Wheeler said, which is trying to protect. So we have two definitely different things going on. So I think I will reach out this week, and maybe we can jointly figure out what's available and go from there. Councilor Ricketts, you asked earlier about a landlord's organization. Just so you know, we have been contacted by a landlords association that wanted to speak to us. So they will be speaking with us at our next working meeting as we try to put some of this together.
Perfect.
Because they've already reached out to us. Go ahead, Valerie.
It not only does it protect against the tenants, but it also protects against the landlords that don't follow through on maintenance of their properties and just don't care. So it protects tenants against those. So it works both ways.
Well, that's what I'm just suggesting that as I was talking to as I had a discussion with Councilor Wheeler about trying to frame it that it kicks in with landlords that have a history of this instead of making it a mandatory thing that we might not have the manpower for or the funds to fund if it's supposed to be helping both sides. Has anyone that hasn't spoken have any questions yet? Councilors?
I just have one.
Go ahead. Sure. Go ahead, Valerie.
Yep. I don't know whether you would be able to target particular landlords. I think that they would feel that they were harassed, and we may end up in more trouble by targeting specific landlords. That's why it was like a blanket.
Right, but if we put a standard together, which is what I was talking to Councilor Wheeler about, where after X amount of public violations or reports, that then it triggers these inspections for a period of 1 year, and then after you do inspections for whatever 6 months after, at the year, you can say they no longer are required to do these pre-inspections unless it went backwards. I want to reward the positive landlords and make sure that we're protecting tenants from landlords that aren't bringing things to minimal living conditions.
Okay.
I just want an ability to not, and also not to overwhelm a system. one of my big fears is if I have an apartment and I'm not a landlord, and I don't have any rental properties, just so we get that clear. But if I was a landlord and I had a property that was I've done my, a tenant has left and I made it available and somebody wants to move in, in a week, in a day, in 3 days, and I have to tell them I have to wait for this inspection. And if there's any type of backlog, it becomes a negative on it's fixing something that wasn't broke. So I just want to make sure that we have safeguards for the majority of the landlords and not make it feel that they're all being punished because of the ill of a few. And that's, I just want to make sure we're open to that theory, because then this committee can work towards language that would be acceptable, that would cause a trigger versus a necessity. Any other counselors that haven't spoken yet? Or any counselor, even if you have spoken?
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Go ahead, Counselor Ricketts.
I
Yeah.
think Doug is,
Support you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Counselor Ricketts, did you want to go?
Oh, I did. I wanted to say something. My room is so dark. I can't find my letters to write the word speak in there. So
No
I guess
problem.
I guess I just wanted to end by saying to Valerie that no, I don't want to target any landlords. But in the same vein, if there are really poor landlords out there, I have no pity for that at all. And having this discussion tonight is really difficult for me because we do have such wonderful landlords and business folks out there. And I don't want them to think that we're going to do some new ordinance and we're going to start, adding on some new fees, because it'll only reflect in the cost of them doing business as far as what they're going to, charge for rent. And we have housing problems right now with just the lack of housing. So I just want to make everything stay affordable and positive as much as possible. So that's why I'm trying to want to hear from everybody and get everyone's language put into this so then it doesn't feel punitive to anyone. And the people it really feels punitive to, then maybe it should. But like I said, I'd love to be on some kind of committee that, once you go to court more than a couple times, something serious needs to happen there.
Yeah, I think that's the trigger that I was talking about, Counselor Ricketts, is, if we're having repeat offenses, then that triggers this, even if it's, as Counselor Wheeler spoke on, to make sure that it's open for tenants that are calling in to our inspection office with problems. Is there a certain amount of those that then would trigger? And that's the stuff we want to look at. That's why next meeting, we will listen and get the Landlords Association and then some key landlords that have asked, and the Greening of Greenfield has asked to speak. And then we can hear that side of it, so we can start to collate this information and make sure we have an ordinance that covers what we're looking for, but it's not viewed as something that is a knee-jerk reaction, is not business friendly, but is protecting of our tenants. Counselor Mayo.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment and maybe dovetail on what Counselor Wheeler has said is, I myself have run across some very bad tenants or landlords, and time after time they've had the Board of Health gone out there and they've done multiple inspections. They've been charged. They've been in housing court, and they have not complied with what they need to be good landlords. And there are a couple in my precinct that I'm just trying to think of a good solid way to teach them a lesson that they cannot get away with this in this town, and that some language needs to be put in place that, from what I heard before, is that housing court is swamped with complaints, and that they're trying to minimize those complaints, and to try to have the town do something through an ordinance would be helpful, where there wasn't one before. That would help housing court. That would also have an avenue for the tenants, and the I guess the bad landlords. So
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councilor Mayo. Okay.
so anyway,
Thank you. And I'm going to recognize two other counselors in just a moment, but as I hear you talk, Councilor Mayo, and I really think what we have to keep referring to, and we're going to talk to the landlords, like we said, in our next working meeting, would be that we want to make sure that we're not creating an ordinance and making all of our landlords do something when the majority are good landlords. And that's one of my biggest concerns, is I want to have Valerie be able to go out in the community and improve tenants' relations. But on the other hand, I don't want to punish all for a few that are, not caring or not concerned or don't follow direction. I just
agree with
don't want to put everybody at a disadvantage because it's quicker to rent in other communities or what have you, because we have an extra layer that's going through. So I want to make sure that we keep that open. And next meeting, we'll be able to hear from those. Councilor Bottomley?
Yeah, I would be very interested in hearing from another town that has a similar ordinance that is proposed. To see, just be interesting to hear from a health director or someone to see how they dealt with that change and the impact on their department with this order, and it'd just be very interesting to see.
No, I think that's a good point. Let me check on that. I'll talk to Councilor Wheeler, who's done some homework on this already, and see if we can find a peer group that might be there in addition. Councilor Forgy, did you have something else to comment?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Actually,
I'm trying to keep track.
Thank you. I wanted to talk about, throw this out to the committee for their review, to talk about some next steps and which other groups besides landlords we'd like to hear from. And Councilor Mayo just mentioned something very interesting about housing court. So I am wondering if it's possible for us to take testimony from an attorney that is involved, might have a good overview from his point of view, what happens in the court and how our ordinance language can be strengthened to prevent the nightmare that Councilor Mayo referred to in our housing court. So that would be one of my suggestions, would be to see if we could find a housing court attorney that would be willing to testify in front of our committee. I also wanted to make sure that that we leave a part of our meeting, it doesn't have to be next meeting, it could be the following meeting, so that we could invite or have a public hearing.
Sorry, Councilor Ford, not to step on that. If we're going to have a public hearing, that's a little bit different than a working meeting. Obviously in appointments and ordinances, we can invite people to speak to us, which we started with Valerie, and we'll invite some of the people that are there. If we decide to do a public hearing, that would be a little bit different. And that's when we hear from the public, but we don't necessarily ask questions. Remember, public hearing is for listening and listening to comments, which we can do. And this might be something that calls for a public hearing. But right now, while we're trying to do the investigation to see if what we're gonna move forward, and we want to ask questions, then we need to invite people like an attorney, like you just suggested, to our working meetings. And then once we have something in a little more palatable idea of where we're going, then we could have a public hearing. Councilor Wheeler, is that what you've been doing as far as EDC and those? I know you've been involved in the public hearings. Those come up once we get a working document?
Yeah, generally public hearings, because they incur a cost, are not scheduled unless there is a legal requirement to schedule them. That said, you would need to check with the mayor. That said, it's completely appropriate if you so choose, but I think I agree with you, Councilor Gwynn, that it might be more effective to do it at a meeting, a regular meeting, and just designate in the agenda that it's a meeting dedicated to public comment, because then you can have the back and forth.
Correct.
And people know that they're coming just for that, but you don't incur that cost, and you do get to have the back and forth.
Yeah, the back and forth, and that's the thing that, when you have a public hearing, that's basically where we listen and don't do a lot of, it's not questions and answers. They're not questioning us, they're making statements. In this format, we can hear from some landlords that have already stepped up, that are, good for our community and really have multiple levels of tenants. Those are the people we need to hear from. And then if Councilor Bottomley or Councilor Ricketts has questions, because it's not in our wheelhouse, we can then ask and they can then answer instead of making a statement, because statements are a little tough for us to use as a tool to get to an ordinance. And as you and I talked about, Councilor Wheeler, seeing that you and I have talked about letting this ordinance develop and then coming back as an ordinance to be considered, correct?
Yeah. I think, as long as the committee keeps in mind that there are a couple of underlying issues here, the difficulty with responding to landlords who threaten eviction and that sort of thing. As long as you keep that in mind, I'm certainly willing to participate and in your process of just dealing with this issue as a community, and I'm for that.
And that's, I think, when we have our next meeting and I think we can try to address that with some of our landlords on the points that you made tonight about the eviction threats and that kind of things. Because once again, none of us are housing landlords, or if we are, that'll be a good thing, because we're going to need every bit of your input. Councilors, any other questions?
Nope.
Comments? Valerie, while you're still on there, as you've heard us speak, is there anything you'd like to add? First of all and foremost, thank you for coming and talking to us. I don't want for a moment for you to think that we're jumping on you or attacking you or anything like that. We just want to make sure that we have something that works for you, works for our tenants, and works for our landlords. I want it to be, nothing in this community is frowned upon more than when we don't address all three elements of a situation and we have one party that feels like they're left out. So I want to make sure we've addressed all of that. So any other comments?
Just that you mentioned you don't want to penalize good landlords. It's not just that. It's good landlords get bad tenants, and once they get the bad tenant, it's too late.
And I think next meeting we'll hear from some of those landlords and they can then express if that's a situation. I just feel like and this is, you and I are going to keep locking words on this. I think if they already have a voluntary inspection that they're not using to protect themselves, then that's their own fault. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but if I was a landlord and I had a bad tenant, the next time before I rented that apartment, I'd call you and have you do that free inspection, because then that gives me a legal document. But if I don't want to use it because I don't want to use it, then I really, I don't get it. I just don't understand. So hopefully when we talk to some landlords, they can add to that and we can try to come up with something that's usable for everybody. But thank you. We're going to work on it. And I will invite you to be involved in all these discussions and open meetings as we move along, because your input is going to be crucial. If it doesn't work for you, it's not going to work for any of us. We all have to work together on this project. But thank you. Any other counselors wishing to speak? Seeing none. Okay. What I would like to ask the members of this committee is to submit to me any specifics on who you'd like to hear from for next meeting. We've already heard from some landlord rental groups in town that I've had business relations and interactions with, and they've already stepped forward and said they'd like to speak with us. I'm looking forward to that. I think Councilor Forgey's suggestion on someone that handles housing law would be a wonderful addition. And I think the Landlords Association, and make sure we're covered.
Okay, yeah, it'll be. I've only gotten one email, so if there's other things out there about this, I haven't received it. So
all I've gotten, Councilor Ricketts, is I've gotten 1, 2, I think 3 requests to speak to us, and going forward to make sure we cover. But I'd like from any of you, if you've had a conversation with someone that is a wealth of information and would be great in helping us make sure that we've covered all aspects of this before we put something together that doesn't work for one or all parties. Anything else?
No.
For any of you that have been viewing us tonight, and I see that there are some landlords that have been on, I would love, you've heard this discussion. Hopefully that you've taken some notes and thoughts on what was brought to us tonight from the inspection department. And we'll go for, yep. I see Greenie of Greenfield just chimed in. Yes, you will have the opportunity to speak with us. That will be coming up at our next meeting, and we'll get those off. So if any of you tonight have listened in and you'd like to be part of my discussion of this committee the next time, please reach out to me, reach out to the council office, and we will then, and if we have too many for one meeting, we'll split it up, because we want this to be an ordinance that works, not an ordinance that gets put together and has crucial errors that don't make it a functioning document for everyone. Anything else from this discussion? Seeing none, if anyone has anything to add before we close the meeting, let me know. Let me check on our agenda. The 2020 ordinance review status update. I was supposed to meet with the mayor's office and that never happened. So I do not have an update to report. It has to start with Chief of Staff Letourneau and I getting together, which we were unable to do as she was the acting mayor, and I just didn't get enough time to speak with her, but I will reach out and have a report for you for the next meeting on where that lays. New business, anything anyone has to bring forward? Anything under old business?
No.
Seeing none, my question is, our regular meeting is scheduled for September 8th. Do you want me to request the people that have been looking to speak on this, speak to us on the September 8th meeting? You feel that's sufficient? Is that the day after Labor Day or Wednesday after Labor Day, correct? Monday, Tuesday, yes, Wednesday. So that should work out. Is that work for everyone to have another meeting that revolves around discussing this with landlords and input from professionals?
We would have to be able to write this ordinance or to just drop it. So
Right.
yeah, so yeah, we absolutely need to do it, and we can't do it all in one. So yeah,
Okay.
we should have it in the next. And
Yep. Okay. September 8th, we'll ask other parties to speak, and we'll see how many step forward, and then I'll determine how many we have time for. Going forward in this process.
that shouldn't matter. It's a committee, and it takes as long as it takes. So this is just a committee meeting. It's not like the full council where we actually do sit and hear from 60 people at some point and stuff, and
Right.
we still have a lot of business. But for appointments and ordinances, we're only doing our business. So I'm just worried about hearing that kind of language when I see some people on already and they're hearing, well, when we'll see how many sign up and how much we have time for. I just want people to know we have time for.
Oh yeah. No,
all who sign
I'm not. I
We
just
don't
want.
determine that. We don't cut it short. We don't do any boundaries.
No,
you know.
I agree. No, I didn't want it to sound like that. I was just suggesting that if we have 20 people that want to speak, that we decide if we're going to take it all in one meeting so they have time to this and questions and answers, or are we going to need an additional meeting? That was all the point I wanted to make. Not that I wanted to give more time, not less.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Anything else from anybody? So looking at this as a working project, we've heard the intent from the inspections. Councillor Bottomley made some good suggestions on finding people, Councillor Forgy, Councillor Ricketts, on people that could come and speak with us. Are there other specific, if there's other specific items that you want answers to, please submit those so we can find someone to address that at our next working meeting. If there's something that dabbles in an area that we didn't speak on, I just want to make sure that there's someone to answer that for us. I know Councillor Bottomley suggested that we get a peer group from another municipality that uses something similar. That would be great at this point, and I will work on that for the next meeting also.
And I think after I see the reports, then I can send you any more information I may need. But I don't know what I don't know now.
Yep. And so now and that's really what I wanted to make sure we were doing. I want to make sure we're getting the information, we're getting things answered. So if we decide to send something forward, that we feel that it addresses all parties involved. Right. Councillor Wheeler, anything to add as the author of the initial request?
Thanks, Councillor Gwynn. I would just suggest that you consider asking for input from any other inspection-related enforcement agents, meaning building inspector, police and/or fire, and/or the zoning department, planning department. Because they can also speak to the experience that we've already had. And secondly, I would just make sure that tenants are not left out of the conversation, because there's a lot of lower income people who are not on this call, and they should be central.
Councillor Wheeler, we talked about a landlords association, is there some kind of organized tenants association? Is there a tenants?
Not that I know of. I have, in speaking to at least one constituent, thrown out the idea of a tenants' rights organization, but I don't know of one. If anyone does, then that would be a great thing to invite, but I don't know of one.
Okay.
All right. No, when you said that, I'm thinking that would be another element that might work. Anyone else on this discussion?
Well, maybe they'll come on the call because many did speak out on this topic at our last 2 council meetings during public comment. So maybe they'll come over to the committee portion and talk about more experience.
I just didn't know if there was an organized group of tenant representation. That was, what I was thinking, if there was somebody that looks at tenant relations. All right, our next meeting will be September 8th at 5:30. It will be WebEx if required. Anything else that anyone would like to add for this evening?
No, I'm gonna go to school committee meeting, so I'm gonna
Motion to adjourn?
get off.
Second.
I make a motion to adjourn. Yep.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, the meeting will be over at 6:49 p.m. Thank you for all your input. And for those of you that are watching, and I do invite you to reach out to me, and I hope to see you in the next discussion because your input is going to be very important as we try to make something that works for all. Thank you very much.